All right, here's something interesting. So I'm looking at a couple of my retics, and my guy just moves some of the retics. This is a golden child orange ghost stripe female, and she's bred quite a bit. She's a tricky breeder. Here's a big female lav retic. So we're talking about Python reticulatus. But, so if I talk about when I'm breeding these animals, just because animals breed doesn't mean they're necessarily ever going to reproduce, you know, have live babies, lay eggs, have dead babies, nothing. Just because you get the animals to breed, that's only part of the equation. And to really do it successfully, you have to basically manipulate the environment and the environmental cues. Even when you actually do all that, and you've done your due diligence as far as proper husbandry, manipulation of temperatures and all that different stuff, you have a chance at breeding something. It's not nearly like an exact science. Like if I was... I won't say an exact science would be, let's say, breeding dogs or cats, but it's far more of something that's predictable. So anyways, so this animal's been breeding, and they could breed for months and nothing happens, or they could breed for months and something happens. But we're keyed in on when they actually become gravid. So when we say an animal's gravid, that basically means that animal has hopefully successfully bred, or she's basically putting in the effort, she's committing to the reproductive cycle. So that means that she is allowing ovum to leave her ovaries and then pass into her oviduct, where they would either form as eggs or ultimately form as living or dead babies, depending on your success. So if I say this animal's ovulating and she's in the process of being gravid, that means the ovum have left or are leaving the animal's ovaries. They're going into the oviduct, and as they pass into the oviduct, they're fertilized. That's where they meet, hopefully, if the animal's bred, they meet sperm that's being stored there. But sometimes you get to actually see the process. So this is called, I call this like the pinch. But see how a lot of that animal's body is not on the ground, and then it looks like this thing ate just some giant thing. Well, this is the animal pushing the developing ovum, which have now hopefully matured, from her ovaries forward into the body. This is heading towards the head. And when it happens, so she has to push them all out of her ovaries through, non-voluntary muscle contraction. And they move up the body. And then what they do is they do a U-turn. And then somewhere in this process, I don't know, they meet the fallopian tubes or wherever the sperm is actually stored. I'm not going to literally define that. They move forward, and then they now go back down into the oviduct. And where the oviduct is, they can continue to grow. They have blood supply, they have nutrient supply, and that's where the animal will then gestate. So when we say gestating females, that animal is now a gravid animal, whether it has good eggs, bad eggs, ultimately live babies or dead babies. She at that point is at least gravid. That means there is no need for further breeding. She'll also set out pheromones or lack of pheromones that will initiate a male to want to breed her. So only the most diehard male would actually want to continue trying to breed her. Usually once an animal's gravid, you can take a very engaging male that wants to breed and put him with that female, and he will act like nothing. So that's actually a really good sign. And so the male would try to breed her if she's putting out the pheromone scent, and sometimes even when they're not putting out the pheromone scent, the male could be so desperate to actually try to breed, he may try to breed non-reproductive females. But so now this animal is gravid. So what she's going to do, once this happens, this might take 24, 48 hours, and it might actually become even more dramatic than what I'm seeing right now. This is actually exciting because this animal is one of my favorite reticulated pythons in my collection. And she's also a very difficult breeder. So this is literally one of the first golden child orange ghost stripe doubles that we ever produced, and we're obviously, these are the first ones ever produced in the world. So we're the creator of these captive breedings of golden child and orange ghost stripe and a bunch of others. So she's an older animal, and she's tricky. She's a tricky breeder, but she is so wonderful and sweet And I'm really excited because it's been a couple years since she's actually gone. And she really, you have to get everything just right to get her to go. But you can see that. So at this point, we'll call it roughly about 2 weeks. Depends on my ambient temperatures and whatever. And sometimes the more eggs they have in them, sometimes these the point from now to laying eggs is a little bit extended because it takes a little more time to basically get all these eggs fully mature where they're actually a viable fertile egg. But so we're going to say roughly within 2 weeks she'll go into her pre-egg laying shed, and at that point she will shed, and then generally we can pretty much time out from that shed date to actually when she lays eggs, and that's generally 30 to 45 days. More eggs they have in them, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Also, if my ambient temperatures are a little bit cooler, that's going to take a little bit longer for her to bring these eggs full term. So she will take a little bit longer in that gestation period. So generally here at Nerd, with our temperatures, I think, it's very reasonable to think, this is 38 days from that shed date. So we add roughly 2 weeks plus 38 days. And from that point, if everything goes right, we get fertile eggs. And then from there, we incubate these eggs around 88 to 90 degrees. And we would, if everything goes right, it'll take us about 88 days, maybe 90 days to actually hatch those all out. All right, so here's some of the basics on some retic breeding parameters. But a lot of this stuff, aside from shed date to lay date, which like a ball python would be shorter, that date is really often like that 30 days, of course, within the right temperature requirements. But retics take a little bit longer. Ball python gestation, so the incubation of an egg in an incubator would roughly take about 56 days, 56 to 60 days. If you allow these animals to maternally incubate the eggs, it will definitely take longer. It can be a little bit more taxing on the female. Plus, I don't have as much control over the humidity and such of the eggs. So I like to artificially incubate eggs. It's a little bit safer and a little bit more up to my abilities. So if I really got it dialed in, I have a better chance of hatching those eggs versus if I'm really sloppy and maybe letting the female maternally incubate. But generally here with our retics, we pull the eggs. All right, hopefully there's some interesting content as I'm just babbling along. Say goodbye.